Looking at our map, we see Queens here, Manhattan here, the East River here, the Harlem River here, Randall and Ward's Island here, Roosevelt Island here. We will be going along the waterfront here, all the way down and even further along. And further along means to this tip of Queens. So let's get going. Well, we begin at Ralph DeMarco Park, a small sliver of a park along the East River. Ralph DeMarco was a local Queens politician, and the park is named for him. And here we're looking out over the East River. See the New York City ferry passing by. That's Randall's Island across the way. And looking north, we see the Bronx. East River at this point will curve to the right and go out to Long Island Sound. And looking south, we see the Hellgate Bridge, and behind it the Triborough and Midtown Manhattan. Here we are in Astoria Park, 60 acres along the East River. As you can see, there's the Triborough Bridge. And the view of the Hellgate Bridge looking north. With Randall's Island behind it, Ward's Island across from us, and the Triborough Bridge right there. Well, here we can see the waters of the Hellgate, a very treacherous stretch of water in the 19th century and earlier for wooden ships. Well, we've come a little further south on our journey, and we can see Astoria Park nestled under the Triborough Bridge. To the right under the bridge is what's called Pot Cove, and where you see the motorboat, it's going up the East River. From here we see the pedestrian footbridge coming from Manhattan at about 103rd Street over to Ward's Island. And the bridge is at the southernmost point of the Harlem River, which flows north from here into the Hudson River. Now at this point, along the riverfront, we see some new buildings and some new buildings being constructed. And Upper Manhattan. The little island that we see right in the middle of our picture is called Mill Rock, and it's small and it's uninhabited, and I don't think anybody's even allowed to land a boat there. Well, here's the ferry, New York City ferry, leaving from the dock behind it at Hallett's Cove. Well, here we are at Hallett's Cove, looking north from the Costco parking lot. You can see the Triborough Bridge in the background. And the cove was named for William Hallett. And he had a home along the banks here, way back in the 17th century. We can see some kayakers in the cove. Well, here we are looking north from actually the Costco parking lot. And we see on our right Hallett's Cove and the pier of the New York City ferry. Here we see the lighthouse at the northern end of Roosevelt Island. And it's been here since about 1872, and it was functional until about the 1940s. And there we see some of the specialized hospitals, which are at the northern end of Roosevelt Island. Well, we're here at Rainy Park along the East River. It's another city park. Dr. Thomas Rainey, a prominent citizen of the area, lobbied for many years back in the 19th century to have a bridge built here to Manhattan. It never happened, as the bridge was eventually built at 59th Street. But the park was named for him, and he was honored on the day that the 59th Street or Queensboro Bridge was opened. Well, from here on the waterfront, we can see the Roosevelt Island Bridge, which connects Queens to Roosevelt Island. The bridge opened in 1955. Before then, the only way you could get to Roosevelt Island was via the Queensboro Bridge, which you can see behind the Roosevelt Island Bridge. And you could either walk to the middle of the bridge or drive your car, take a bus or a trolley to the middle of the bridge, and there was an elevator attached to the bridge which would take you down to the island. We're entering Queensbridge Park, another park along the East River. Well, the park is about 20 acres. It was opened in 1939, and as you can see, it's just below the 59th Street Bridge. Well, we're right on the river, and you can see the 59th Street Bridge. And just below the bridge is the ferry dock for Roosevelt Island. And here comes the ferry. As we look towards the south, we see the UN building, Chrysler building, and off in the distance, the World Trade Center building. Well, off in the distance we see the World Trade Center. see the 59th Street Bridge, opened in 1909. Just under the bridge there, behind the bridge, is the United Nations building. And on the left are the residential buildings of Long Island City. Well, here we see the residential area of Roosevelt Island, and there are about 15,000 residents. Just to the south of the bridge, we see the Cornell Tech Graduate School, one of the graduate schools of Cornell University, opened about 6 or 7 years ago. And here we see a kayaker on the East River, enjoying a beautiful Sunday. Now we're here at Gantry Plaza State Park, a 12-acre park along the East River. From this northern end of the park, we see the 59th Street Bridge, and behind it, the bridge from Roosevelt Island to Queens. And we also see the Cornell Graduate Center on Roosevelt Island. And behind Roosevelt Island, buildings of the east side of Manhattan. Well, Long Island City was, and may still be, the most heavily industrialized area of New York City. Pepsi-Cola had a bottling plant right here, and they're gone many years, but the sign has remained, and you can see it from Manhattan, lit up at night, and it's quite an icon of New York. Well, here we see the gantries with the buildings of Long Island City directly behind the park. A gantry is a type of crane used to lift railroad freight cars from barges. 800 tons of cargo could be moved by the gantries in 15 minutes. Long Island is painted on the cranes to indicate that this is the westernmost point of Long Island. Montauk is about 110 miles to the east. Well, here we see one of the two ferry stops in Long Island City, in the park. And there on the other side, we can see the 35th Street ferry stop in Manhattan. So if you're living in this area here, you've got about a 3 or 4 minute ride to Manhattan. A view of the East River, Empire State Building, Chrysler Building, United Nations Building. across from us, at the southern tip of Roosevelt Island, is Franklin D. Roosevelt Four Freedoms Park. And it opened about 10 or 11 years ago. And we see also on Roosevelt Island one of the old hospitals. And that's no longer in use. In fact, it's a ruin, but it's been named as a landmark, so I don't think they'll be tearing it down anytime soon. We have a playground in the park with the river behind. State-of-the-art playground. The park even has beach volleyball. Now the white building is a brand new library. Well, from here we can see the Trade Center on the right. And we come around to see the Williamsburg Bridge. And the park below us. And these tall buildings here are in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. We've reached the southernmost point in our journey along the waterfront in Queens. And before us is Newtown Creek, and then the other side is Greenpoint in Brooklyn. So here's the point where the creek flows into the East River. And it goes for about a mile or so inland, separating the Brooklyn and Queens. And at one time, it was the most heavily industrialized area in the United States. But those days are long gone, and now it's just a creek. We've reached the end of our trip at Newtown Creek. We're looking east with Greenpoint, Brooklyn on the right and Queens on the left. We can see the Pulaski Bridge in the middle, spanning the creek, taking traffic from Brooklyn to Queens and Queens to Brooklyn. We've had a great time looking at the vistas and parks along the waterfront of Queens, and we'll see you next time.